1874, the podcast with Dan Bardell and Gregg Evans.
Hello, welcome back to 1874, the podcast. I'm your host, Dan Bardell, joined by the Athletics' Gregg Evans to talk all things Aston Villa like we normally do this time of week. Greg, very on brand today.
I was just thinking that,
you used to call me Brand Bardell, but you've come in here today sporting the Adidas goods.
Yeah, what I would say is that Aston Villa have finally caught up with me rather than me following Aston Villa. So,
anything that's come through the post from anyone, or is it Gregg Evans' own?
No, I'm not as well connected as you. So no, I don't get my
anything sent from the club.
I don't get my links sent through to share when kit releases come through.
It's nice though. I appreciate that you've done it. I literally picked up like leftover Conor Harahan shirt. You can see I've still got the two Conor Harahan shirts in the background if you're watching via video, and there was another one that was a candidate to go up, and I literally just picked it up and put it on. And I'm going to be honest, I wish I hadn't, because it's one of the player fit skin tight ones and it is boiling, and I wish I'd not put it on today. That was a huge mistake. So if you see me sweating during this podcast, that will be why. How are you though, other than your brand deals with Adidas?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Dan. I've actually just bought some new Adidas golf shoes as well, so yeah, I very much am on point. No, I'm all good. People that follow me on social media would have seen that I was at the golf this weekend, covering Live Golf, which was great at the UK. Really good, exciting tour. Yes, there are issues that still need to be resolved around that tour, but really exciting. And good to see quite a lot of Villa fans there. Quite a few people pulled me up in the crowd, said hello, which was nice. And yeah, just quite a few people are asking me about my social media, Instagram and stuff. So I have a couple of Instagram accounts. One is just for friends and family, but if anybody wants to follow me, my personal, my sort of open public one is Gregg's Golf. Hosted a golf day last week with a couple of people from connected to Villa and some fans and stuff. So it was a really good day. Great to catch up. So if anybody wants to follow me on there, they can. We can talk about golf and football.
I mean, you can guarantee as well that when I post something involving you, I'll automatically do the wrong one by mistake.
Yeah, always.
Got caught out doing that the other week as well. I thought of you yesterday because I was at the Belfry, obviously one of the homes of golf. I wasn't playing golf. Actually, I went to the driving range and I am appalling. But I will say that I saw lots of Villa shirts. This new kit launch has gone very well. What did you think of the advert last week or the social media video? I've got to be honest, I thought it was absolutely exceptional.
Yeah, it was good. I enjoyed it. I think hats off to the content team, and the obviously the people higher up who've put it all together. I haven't looked much deeper into it. I think Jacob's doing an article on it for the Athletic at some point this week, so look out for that. He will be bringing some more details around it, I think. But yeah, just sort of looking from the outset, it was really good. I think clubs are trying to outdo themselves, are trying to outdo each other, aren't they? It's all about how they can activate, these new deals, new kit releases, new player signings, new contracts. It's all about going one better than elsewhere. And speaking to a lot of people in marketing and just football in general, that side, commercial, that side of it. Everybody had good things to say about it, so that's usually a sign that it was a success.
Yeah, I keep my eye on stuff like that, social media, launch videos and kits and things like that, because obviously I'm well into my kits. I've got to say, I criticised Villa on a ticketing front. From a shirt perspective there, the lead time would have been a lot less for this Adidas stuff as well, because of the nature of the way they split with Castor. So I'll give Chris Heck and everyone at Villa massive credit for that kit launch. I thought it was the best Premier League kit launch that there's been, not only for Villa, just generally in the Premier League. It was so unique, so clever, the way they did it. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. So hats off to everyone at Villa. Like you say, Greg, let's talk about what we came here to talk about. Then we decided this week that we're going to look into Villa's transfer activity. Obviously, Villa have done a lot already. There's going to be some outgoings as well. You would expect Villa are trying to shift players as we speak. Not sure how well it's going, but we're going to look at what we think between us that Villa might still need. Looking at the makeup of Villa's squad, Greg, the way they're building up for this new campaign, obviously it's creeping ever nearer, a few weeks away now until the season starts. You'd like to think they'll get most of the business in place before that first game of the season against West Ham. That's the way Emery likes to operate. What are you seeing as the positions that Villa might still need some incomings, Greg?
I think I've been pretty consistent with this and saying that I do think Villa need another striker. You know, I know Cameron Archer has been playing during pre-season, and perhaps he could be the guy that fills in for Ollie Watkins and plays the John Duran role next year. There would certainly be worse strikers that Villa could get hold of, and he's had a bit of experience in the Premier League now, so you know he might be ready. But I do think if Villa are going to really kick on, that they do need another guaranteed almost goal scorer / backup to Ollie Watkins. So that's the area for me. I think midfield looks pretty packed, doesn't it? I think the sort of number 10 / wide positions are pretty crowded as well. I think there are lots of different options for Villa around those areas. And obviously, you know, if this Joao Felix pursuit goes any further and Villa are able to get that deal done, yeah, we know that Unai Emery loves the guy, but it will all come down to money at the end of the day. So that might be another option for Villa. But yeah, that's the area for me. I do think that they're pretty stacked elsewhere. You know, goalkeeper, we're seeing Joe Gauchi getting a few more minutes during pre-season. Perhaps he could be the guy who's ready to be the number 2 to Emi Martinez. Central defence looks pretty strong, doesn't it? The wing backs. Look, you know, I think Villa are very well stacked, and even if they didn't get anybody else now, I do think that they were going to the season in very, very good shape. But I think there's just a tiny little bit more room for additions.
Yeah, look, obviously, not going to go into John Duran too much today. Obviously, he's been doing what he's been doing on social media, absolute live wire on the pitch, absolute live wire off the pitch as well. But we'll save that for another day. He's obviously going to go. Look, he's doing everything he can to sever ties with Villa whilst he's still there. So John Duran will depart. The way I'm kind of seeing it at the moment is that I think Archer might stay. I mean, the way my record's been on podcast recently is fully expect him to go tomorrow. Now I've just said that. But I think Cameron Archer may well stay as like Duran's almost replacement. And then let's say it is Joao Felix who comes in. He's almost then Diaby's replacement, but that player, he can then also play as a 9, I think, in a certain formation, depending on the players that you would have around him. That's how I'm kind of seeing it at the moment. That Archer will end up replacing Duran. Let's say Joao Felix replaces Diaby, but he can play in 2 positions, either as the 10 with Watkins, or when Watkins isn't there, he plays as a 9, and Morgan Rogers, Tillemans, John McGinn, whoever plays as a number 10. That's how I'm seeing it at the moment. What do you think of that?
I mean, that would be pretty good, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I'd be happy with that.
If I think most Villa fans would be really excited about that going into the season. You know, potentially getting Felix in, or another alternative, and then also having Cameron Archer around. I think it's pretty easy. It's quite easy to forget that, you know, where sort of Cameron Archer has been. It wasn't a great season for him at Sheffield United, but he was in a really bad team, and you know, strikers don't get that many chances when they're in the worst Premier League team when they're in the worst team in the Premier League, and he would have learned a fair bit from that, I think. But
sometimes
also,
a bad season does help players, doesn't it? Like in terms of long-term career development. If you have a bad time, which it's not really his fault, like you say, it does help someone long-term, even if the short-term gains might not be there.
Yeah, and I just think for Archer, he's going to be at the point now. He's still a young man, yeah, but I think he's at the stage now where he's been around a fair bit. You know, he's had spells at Blackpool. He had a spell at Middlesbrough, didn't he? And then he was at Sheffield United last year. He's going to need almost a home now, somewhere where he's going to be for a couple of years and can really knuckle down and start thinking about, you know, scoring a lot of goals and, you know, ultimately pushing for the England team. That's going to be his target, because he's an England under 21 international who's scored goals for a couple of seasons now, almost everywhere he's been. So the long-term aim for Cameron Archer, as outlandish almost as it seems at the moment, will be to play for England, the senior team, at one day. So that's what he's going to be pushing for. So, you know, is that going to be at Villa? Is he going to be the backup to Ollie Watkins this season, and then maybe kick on next season and get more opportunities? You know, perhaps that could be the case. Or do Villa wait, sit tight, wait for a big bid to come in, move him on, and bring somebody in to replace him? So, you know, that's still a little bit early to decide on that, and perhaps things might change in January. Now, Emery might have another look at him for the first half of the season and think, okay, we've given him a go. He's not quite ready for us. We're going to move him on, or the opposite. we've looked at him. We think he actually is ready. He scored 5 or 6 goals going into January. This guy can be really useful for us. So all is not lost for Villa. They've got a very good striker there, albeit not world class yet, but somebody who could, really fill a gap, I think, for Watkins and be somebody who knows how Emery wants to play. That Emery knows what he's like, what he's good at, what he needs to improve on, what he's like around the place. It's a bit of a low risk one, really, because if you sign somebody, you're then learning about them, trying to find out what they're like around the place, what they're good at, whether they can fit into the system. Emery will know what Cameron Archer is good or bad at right now. So because he's been with him for long enough. So, that can work in his advantage as well.
The more I think about it, the more I think it makes sense for both parties for him to stay. I don't think a loan to the Championship, for example, at this point does Archer any huge favours.
He's gone past that, hasn't he?
Yeah. Villa are going to have lots of games. So, cup games as well, hopefully, in terms of the League Cup and the FA Cup, although I'm not sure Emery's that bothered by what I've seen previously from Emery's Villa in the Cup. Villa have got these homegrown slots that they need to fill in the Champions League squad as well. So if Archer moves out, squad-wise, they can't necessarily just bring in a replacement as a backup striker and kind of put them in the squad because they've got limitations to what they can do in terms of registering the 25-man squad. The more I think about it, the more I think it makes sense. I wouldn't say Archer is a drop down from John Duran, who was backup to Ollie Watkins for the entirety of last season. And if you're then bringing in that player who can play as a 9 and a 10 as well to facilitate the squad, I genuinely think that's Villa's best option at the moment.
Yeah, look, I mean, if Emery can get him Felix, for example, then he's going to be really happy with that. But if we're looking solely at Archer, no disrespect to him, he's going to be behind Watkins, and Watkins is going to play pretty much every game that Villa need him to, providing he's fit. So, he was like the Harry Kane situation at Tottenham for so long, wasn't it? They just couldn't go and buy a top elite level striker because he wasn't going to play the minutes. And then also finding somebody who could pair with him was quite difficult as well. So it just ended up that Kane played loads of minutes. Tottenham went through lots of different strikers who didn't get much game time, didn't score many goals. So, Villa finding someone better than Ollie Watkins is so difficult. And yeah, as you say, Dan, I think you're right. Villa are going to have lots of games. There's going to be lots of opportunities. And bringing Cameron Archer on for 20 minutes when it's 0-0 or 1-0 or the game's even over is not a bad option. And then perhaps using in some cup games and some lower level Premier League games where you need to rest Watkins for ahead of a big Champions League game. I don't think it's a bad position for Archer either. I
mean, pre-season as well, he'd been in the team. I know you can't read too much into team selections for team season, but again, the range of this guy's finishing. He scores goals. I would not judge him on what, like we said earlier, I wouldn't judge him at all on what happened last season. But for Sheffield United, I'm feeling quite positive about him. And if you're asking me whether I'd rather have him or John Duran, I think I would rather have Cameron Archer, even if John Duran wasn't an absolute nutcase.
It's just so interesting with Duran, isn't it? I mean, what's he going to go and do? Where's he going to get to? Where is he going to get to? Is he going to be brilliant? And Villa are looking back and thinking, do you know what? Should we have just stuck with him and not been so concerned about his bad parts because of the wonderful talent he is? Or is he going to be the guy that, reminds me a bit like Balotelli in some ways. He's not quite as bad and crazy as him, but there's that element to it, isn't it? Very, very good player, but just a little bit wild off it. You don't quite know what he's going to get. So it's a shame, really, because Villa worked really hard to get him. They fought off a lot of competition from other clubs. Spend what you often forget with signings is the hard work that goes into it, through the scouting department and the recruitment team, and how many times they fly out to certain locations to speak with family and people around them to try and convince them that Villa's the project and Villa will be the venue where he'll get the most game time, where he'll flourish the most. So, it's been difficult for him because he hasn't played that often. So he's come in expecting to be the man, and he hasn't been it. And if he moves, he might get that opportunity. But, it's just so difficult in football. Every move's a gamble, isn't it? You never know what's going to happen. Is he going to go and kick on and score 20 goals in a Premier League season? he's got it in him, hasn't he? But I'm not sure he's going to do it or not. We just have to wait and see.
What I would
If
say,
what I would say, sorry to put in, Danny.
Right.
If Phil gets some good money for him, they might look at it then as a good business deal. Signed him for a low amount, had him for a couple of seasons, realised that he didn't quite fit into what Emery wanted, wasn't quite the character that they expected, and they've made a huge profit on him to go and reinvest in another player. That would be seen as good business, perhaps, even if he does go on and become a real star.
If you're getting 30+ million for this guy, you are taking that to the bank and absolutely laughing, in my opinion. Yes, he may turn out to be an unbelievable striker, but I would say it's 50-50. So set way, either way, it's 50-50. What happens to him? If he goes to West Ham, I guarantee you in a year's time, he's talking about needing Champions League football, which is exactly what he would have now at Villa, but he doesn't seem to want to do it, John Duran. So it is what it is. I've made my feelings clear on him many times before over the last 6 or so months, so I won't do it again. Just on Joao Felix, Greg, what's your instincts here? Gregg Evans' transfer instincts. What are you saying? Do you think it will happen? If you had to go either way, do you think Villa will get Joao Felix?
God, I wouldn't like to be put on the spot because I don't know
this is unfortunately what's just happened, Greg.
The exact figures behind it, I'm not fully aware of right now. So, and where Villa are at and how much they want to pay, I have to do some more research into finding that out. I think if Villa can get it for the right deal, but they're going to have to be creative with it, because it's a huge outlay that they would having to pay for him. Now, Felix for me is just. I don't mean to sound disrespectful to him because I'm judging him solely on the games that I've watched, which are probably not that many in all honesty. But he just doesn't look like a footballer that enjoys playing, does he? He doesn't ever really look like he's massively up for it. That he definitely hasn't kicked on since he's been to Atletico Madrid. In my view, it feels like he's almost gone backwards. Was pretty damn poor at Chelsea. But then there's the flip side of it. Emery really likes him, believes he's the type of player that he can mould into, the player that he likes. We know the record that Emery has of improving players, so I always back him to get the best out of people. I'm just basing Felix on what I've seen. It's just not that impressive so far.
I completely take on board what you've said, and some of the stuff I don't think you can argue with there. I agree with the stuff you've just said about Emery as well. My feelings on it are that it's been compared to Coutinho a little bit. Now, look, it would be huge money. So from a financial perspective, I can see why it would be compared to Coutinho. But the difference is Coutinho was on the wane in his 30s. Still got a long time to go. This is at least 6-7 years at the top, you would think, if he's looked after himself, which I'm sure he has. It's a lesson for footballers to make the right moves. He hasn't made the right move. He had a lot of problems at Atletico Madrid because he doesn't fit in with Simeone's style of football. I think we all know what type of footballer Joao Felix is, and that's not me knocking Simeone or Atletico Madrid because what they've done is brilliant over the years. But Felix doesn't fit that really at all. So that move was never going to work. A little bit like when Benteke went to Liverpool. That was never going to work. Liverpool didn't cross the ball. So how was that move ever going to work? Because that's what he thrived upon. So Felix has made a wrong decision. He's then had loans at Chelsea and Barca. Chelsea were absolutely all over the place. If a player's not done well, you look, well, did any other player do well in that time at that club? Not really. No, Chelsea were really, really rank at that half a season loan, that he had. He's then gone to Barcelona. Probably a mixed bag, a team, and a manager in Xavi that will suit him and his style of football a little bit more. But again, Barcelona aren't the force that they were. They've had some difficult moments whilst he was there. Didn't really have a set position in that team when he made that move, but he wanted to play for Barcelona, so he went there. I wouldn't necessarily judge him on those moves. Also, Portugal, he's just watching Ronaldo be trundled out every single time, isn't he? There must be a lot of forward players in Portugal who are sick of the sight of Ronaldo as much as he's done in the game. They must be thinking, when's the time for him to move on and someone else to get a go? So I know you're saying, I can't say I've seen loads of him either, like you, but I find it difficult to judge him in those circumstances. But I think if Emery gets a hold of him, you look at what he did for Benfica. I just think there is a long time ago, Dan.
It's a long time ago, Benfica.
But he's only 24.
Again, he's only 24, so let's break it down a bit more. It's not the same as Coutinho. Coutinho was arriving at Villa on the back of an injury hit 3 years or 2 years. There were the jokes that were coming out of Spain were that we thought this guy had retired already. We can't believe he's moving back to the Premier League. But we know the reason he went to Villa. It was to appease Steven Gerrard, a manager who really liked him. Now, if we're going to look at that element of giving a manager somebody who he really wants, and we know that Unai Emery loves Joao Felix. He's spoken about him from the very start when he moved to Villa, because he's been linked with Villa in almost every transfer window. We know he loves him. Now, Emery has actually earned the right to be given the freedom to go and do a real big deal like this, I think, because he's made the club much better with his elite level coaching. He's improved so many players, and he can say, look what I've done to this player, this player, this player, this player, and this player. A couple of them that we've brought, but many of them that were already there, I've made the majority of them better. I want this guy. I think I can do this with him. So if you're a manager and his team pitching to owners, Nassif Sawiris and Wes Edens, you're looking at that and thinking, if we can make the deal happen, he deserves to be able to go and get that guy. So totally understand that. But you mentioned the point about Barcelona and Chelsea, but if you can't do it at Barcelona when they're the second best team in the Liga, where they're absolutely dominating possession, they're getting lots of chances, they're winning most games, they're creating more opportunities than most teams, but Felix wasn't ripping it up there. Chelsea, okay, maybe it didn't work for anybody, and moving to England and going into that environment perhaps was difficult. I remember a game against Villa when he had a couple of good opportunities, but missed them both. Went very close actually to scoring one of them. But yeah, just for me, his record over the last 3 or 4 years hasn't been great. With Portugal, he's been a bit unfortunate with Ronaldo. Obviously Rafael Leao has been brilliant. Bernardo Silva, very exciting player in the team. So it's hard to get into that Portugal team, admittedly. And yes, he's still only 24 years old. So it's another one. It's like the Duran situation. Does Duran go and be brilliant somewhere else if he leaves Villa? We don't know. Does Felix come to Villa and be brilliant, or does he continue the patterns of the last few years where he's been pretty average? We don't know. We'd back Emery to do it to make him better, yeah. But sometimes the player needs to really pull it out, and it hasn't quite happened for him. So it's something that we just have to literally wait and see if he did move. Saying that, with all that put together, you could make an argument for or against. I think most Villa fans would be really, really happy to see him come, because it's an ambitious, exciting signing. Somebody coming in at a very young age for big amounts of money, who's moved for incredible money before, and you'd be looking at that and thinking, do you know what? This club that I support, if you're a supporter, is a proper heavyweight now. We're going out and buying players like Joao Felix, and we're in the Champions League, and we're trying to improve our squad.
I mean, Villa have spent money, yes. There's a weird dialogue going around at the moment about how much money Villa have spent, because actually they've had a pretty fruitful window in terms of outgoings as well. If Duran's to go, I believe they're in profit, Villa, from what they've done. I'd have to do the maths, but from what I read, I think Villa would be
about 140 million, haven't they? Spent about 140. So if you add up what they brought in, they brought 60 back from Diaby, 40 plus for Louise, and then a bit more, haven't they? So, who are the other big ones? I can't think of.
Well, if Duran goes, you're looking at around
and Duran,
million, aren't you?
So it's about even, isn't it? Yeah. Almost. But yeah, we'll have to crunch the numbers a bit tighter before we know that. And obviously, then when the next set of accounts come out, we'll look at the last accounting period to see how much the wage bill's gone up, how much was spent on ins and outs during that period, because transfer fees that are reported are often slightly different to what are actually paid.
Installments as well. Sometimes fees are paid,
of course,
over the period of the contract. Those all amortized. Is that even a word? In the same way, for books purposes. But I'm just thinking, if Villa sold Diaby for 60, they sell Duran for, let's say, 30. And the finances they could be there for Felix, to me.
Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't be too far off, but Villa are quite tight already, weren't they? Weren't a season where they were going to be able to go and spend lots of money. We were hearing very early into the window that Villa were going to do lots of swap deals, lots of player trading. We've seen that already with players already coming in and out. Obviously, the wage bill's going up because of bonuses for the Champions League, and new players coming in. Yes, they would have got a bit back with the players going out, but you know, we were talking over the summer of a club that were quite tight in terms of the numbers. So it wasn't always going to be a case of Villa going out spending lots of money this summer, even though they've got the increased revenues of the Champions League football. It was more a 2/3 year plan moving forward to try and get the revenues up to 400 million and then see if they can kick on from there.
I mean, I think the squad's a lot stronger at the moment than it was last season. They've lost a huge bit of quality in Douglas Luiz. Did a pod with Conor Harahan last week. If you haven't watched, and he was talking about Douglas Luiz and how he thinks that's a real big loss in Villa's midfield, which I'm not going to argue with. But I do think in terms of numbers now that Villa have, I think there's a bit more quality within the players that aren't necessarily in the first 11, but can come on and influence games. I think there's going to be some really good players not in the starting 11 if everyone's fit on the first day of the season away at West Ham. So I'm excited about that. I think Villa are in a decent place. We missed Kellyman. They sold Kellyman for 20 million to Chelsea as well, didn't they? So Villa have bought in some serious money this window. You said about like everywhere else is pretty well set. I think the left back situation, at least one needs to go there. There's too many players that are in that area. So one of Moreno or Dean at least probably needs to depart. There was murmurs around Diego Carlos, centre back. We still don't really know when Mings is going to be back. I was hoping. In fact, I think he did know. He just didn't want to tell me on the podcast. But anyway, we don't know when Mings is coming back at the moment. Carlos is another one who you feel like when he'll play 2-3 games and then he'll perhaps get injured and miss a few weeks. I still think there's maybe room for a centre back in there if Carlos departs as well, Greg.
Oh, I think if Carlos departs, we're talking about Villa needing a centre back, because lost Longley, he's gone. Callum Chambers, who was one of the backups, no longer at the club. So those are two senior players that have departed, and Villa haven't brought any in. Not that they're going to miss those too much, if that makes sense. But you mentioned Carlos there with his injuries. Perhaps potentially picking up an injury after 3 or 4 games or whatever. I think we're going to have to watch that with Mings when he comes back as well.
Yeah,
exactly. He's going to need a period of, real monitoring. They're going to have to take it so slow with him. Let him just go. Just really be careful with him because he's been out for so long. The same as Buendia. They don't want a recurrence of that injury or any setback. And you speak to players who've been out for so long, and they always say that the most scary, worrying period is once they're fully back. He's not breaking down again, and it happens. If you remember with Carlos, it happened to him, didn't it? And he had a period out, and last season was probably the season where he just needed to rebuild again. He's got a very fit guy. Not a young guy anymore, but still very fit. So we'll be able to continue for lots of years. You would expect Mings the same. Looks after his body incredibly well. Took a real. Shifted his diet a few years ago to become even cleaner eating and focusing more on recovery, etc. Just everything to become a better professional. All these little 1% that players need these days. So you've got 2 guys there who are very dedicated to their craft, and if they're fully fit, you'd back them to go and be top performers in this Villa side. But they probably do need to look at another centre half. Is it time to? We've seen Josh Feeney again, haven't we, in the squad this summer? Is it time to start promoting him into first team training and giving him that exposure for a little bit more now? Perhaps in some of the cup games, does he get a chance to show that he's this tall, growing a little bit in terms of physical ball playing defender who came from Fleetwood, having played league football at a very, very young age at 16. Is it time for him now to maybe kick on something like that? Can Villa look to the youth team and maybe bring someone in? I do think with the Champions League fixture, they're going to probably need somebody who knows that they can be relied upon, but are not going to play every week. Someone like a Longley, someone that you can turn to when you need to, because the numbers aren't that strong if Mings doesn't come back quickly.
And what about right back? as
Well,
well.
you've got,
What are you
look,
making of that situation?
I mean, Cash has been linked with the move away for a couple of transfer windows
Not
now,
for
hasn't
me.
he? He's been linked with Atletico Madrid and AC Milan. I'd like to see him stay. I like Cash. I think he fits well into the
He won't go.
the Emery system. I don't think he'll. I mean, yeah, they're going to be quite short now. You've got Nedeljkovic. Is that how you pronounce it? Nedeljkovic.
I've been saying Nedeljkovic, but I'm pretty sure that's wrong.
Oh yeah, God. I mean, well, one of us are way off. So
Let's just call him Ned for now.
Ned. Well, they got
Yeah.
Ned. They got Ned
Ned
at
right
right back, and we'll definitely learn his name for the next game. Sorry,
Sure.
Ned. We don't mean to be rude.
You know what the problem is, though? Like,
You, but
Samuel Ealing Jr., I've heard that said two different ways. I thought it was Ealing Jr., then someone told me it was Eiling Jr., and then I watched something this morning and it was Ealing. So, getting the pronunciation right is impossible.
So a lot of the times when you go to games in the Premier League and the media, if you're a commentator, not necessarily us who are me who's a writer, but if you're a commentator and you go to the games, you get a list of all the players with the pronunciations of the names, which is great. So yeah, we need a bit of that, don't we?
Yeah.
We'll get the names nailed for the next podcast. Apologies, but yeah, right back looks fine for me. There's obviously Kessler Hayden as well as another option. So, he's had a bit of time out in League 2, League 1, and the Championship. So, is he ready? Let's see. He might have a chance of playing a few more minutes this year, which would be good for him and good for Villa's academy.
I suppose the thing about these academy players, I think normally you would say yes to this, but I just think because they're in the Champions League, it needs people with a bit more experience. If you're asking people who haven't even played in the Premier League for Villa to come in and play in the Champions League,
it's true.
I think that's a tough ask for the player as much as anything. You would sink or swim at that point. You could potentially be ruining someone's career if you throw them in too early. But I trust the club. I trust Emery, I guess, is the big thing here. By the time at the end of the week, who he thinks he's ready and who's not, because they'll be on loan, won't they? Essentially, so if he thinks they can't fulfill a role in the squad, they won't be there. Emery's shown that he doesn't keep people around just for the sake of it.
No, but also what you got to remember from a manager's point of view is, the manager would want to keep all the players really at Bodymore Heath and just throw a few of them back down to the under-21s and have them available whenever they're there, and call them up to training whenever he wants, or integrate them into the squad whenever he wants. So you got to think of the manager's point of view. They want every single player available at their disposal. The issue comes around players' development, the agent saying, well, look, he's not playing, he's not featuring, he's not even training at times. Not talking about Kessler Hayden here, we're just talking about youngsters in general, but this guy needs to go and play to aid his development, and then it's a situation of Emery saying, well, okay, we can do it. Let's have a conversation, but can we keep him until January, and then we'll let him go in January? So all these little conversations will be having and taking place. And if Villa are quite short in one particular position, if they've only got two players in one position, then the third's an academy player or a young player, and that is the case with Kessler Hayden, isn't it? There's Cash, Ned, and Kessler Hayden. Well, Kessler Hayden's actually older than Ned, but
I'm loving his Ned nickname, by the way.
He's going to be on your shirt next, isn't he?
You don't even know now. Too expensive if it's by the letter, Greg. I'm not sure if it's by the letter anymore.
Ned, we're going with Ned, aren't we? That's his name now.
20 Ned. Yeah, I'm a big fan of that.
But yeah, all these conversations are going to take place. On a serious note, all these conversations are going to take place, and it's just too early. There'll be plenty of clubs that are interested in taking Villa's academy players and fringe players because they're top players now.
Yeah, I mean, if you're wondering why we haven't discussed certain areas of the squad, for example, central midfield, it's because there's nothing to be done there. That's why we're not doing the area by area. We're talking about the areas that we think Villa still have work to do. So to finish, my favourite topic, Greg, backup goalkeeper. What do you think? I'm not, again, I hate doing this. I'm just trying to be honest. I'm not trying to be harsh, but it's the one blind spot I think I thought of Emery the whole time he's been there is we need a number 2 goalkeeper here, because I know he's played in pre-season and I saw the video of him with the glasses on the other day where he's making the catches. It was all very, very good video. Again, I enjoyed that piece of content, watching Matty Cash try to catch things with the glasses on, and he couldn't do it. But I think Olsen struggles in Emery's system. I So for me, it's been a blind spot that we haven't had a second choice goalkeeper. Gauchi came in the other night. It's a friendly. You can't really read anything into it. Shipped 4 goals. But what do you think of the goalkeeper situation? Because they're not even linked with getting another goalkeeper in, Greg. So does that tell you that Villa are going with what they've got in goal?
Oh yeah, I mean there has been some talk around the goalkeeper. I have heard some conversations with people from speaking to people within the industry, but nothing sort of solid and concrete at this point in time. And Villa signed a goalkeeper in January, didn't they? They brought Joe Gauchi in, so that was with one eye on the future. So is he going to be the guy? That there was a lot of scouting, a lot of hard work that went into signing him, and reasons why Villa thought that they were getting a goalkeeper that had the potential to kick on and be a solid international and very good backup goalkeeper to Emi Martinez in the future. And Villa don't envisage losing Martinez anytime soon. So when we talk about Olsen, I think it would be wrong for us to try and dress this up in any other way, because we're speaking on behalf of Aston Villa supporters here, and the majority of Villa supporters, when they see Olsen in goal, forget the good things that he's done, and I will get onto it very quickly after, because he has done a lot of good things, and there were times in the Europa Conference League when he was impressive and his teammates really praised him, and there has been other times too. But the general feeling is that when Olsen's name's on the team sheet and when he's in goal, there's a bit of angst and worry amongst supporters. They feel like he's not as good as Emi Martinez, and not many goalkeepers in the world, if any, are. But also, he's made a lot of mistakes. He's conceded a lot of goals. He doesn't pass it out as well as other goalkeepers do from the back. It doesn't really feel like he works in Emery's system, and there's just nervousness around supporters when he's in goal. So for me, that's not good. And I think at his age now, he will surely be wanting to go and play somewhere and have a final run somewhere as a number one, because he's not going to get that at Villa. And the move from Copenhagen to Roma didn't quite. It was that way, wasn't it? Copenhagen to Roma didn't quite work, did he? He was replacing Alisson, so that was always going to be difficult. And then the reason he came to Villa was because Johan Lange knew him from Copenhagen and thought he could be a very successful goalkeeper in England. And he's had his moments. He's had some good moments, but he's had more bad moments, unfortunately. And when you're behind Emi Martinez, this is also another point. And this is one of the things that Robin Olsen actually does very well. He knows his place in that setup. He knows. Helps. And that helps massively. Let's not avoid this, because that's a huge thing. And when I've spoken to many goalkeepers, goalkeeping coaches from different clubs, and if they've got a very set number one, they have to work really hard to keep the number 2 and number 3 and academy goalkeepers motivated. And Neil Cutler was one example. He said to me, with Robin Olsen and Jed Steer at the time, he said he used to set them little challenges to try and keep them motivated, because they always knew that Emi Martinez was going to play. And the feedback on Olsen from the goalkeeping coaches that have worked with him at Villa is that he challenges Martinez. He pushes him hard each week in training, and that's a big thing. They need somebody who can do that. But also, he's tried to adapt to the Emery way, and he's tried to pick things up off Martinez so that when he comes in, he can almost fill in that role seamlessly. But it's just not the same, is it, with him in goal? And sorry, that's a very long-winded answer of saying Villa probably need another number 2.
Yeah, look, I hate being disrespectful to footballers and players that are playing for Villa. I don't know do that with Olsen, because I have heard so many good things about him in terms of the training ground. We did an interview with Cutler. I can't remember when it was now, and he raved about him, which I'm never expecting him to come on and slag him off, obviously. But he said some really nice things about him, and he has had some nice moments in a Villa shirt as well. But since that move to Roma, this is years ago now. I'm talking as well. He was back up at Everton to Jordan Pickford, which again is fine. Pickford's a very good goalkeeper. He then went to Sheffield United in the Championship and lost his place and was number 2 in the Championship, Sheffield United, not that long ago. And Villa picked him up off the back of that. Villa are a top 4 team who are going to be playing Champions League football. If Emi Martinez is unavailable for any reason, even at the high end of the Premier League, if Emi Martinez is unavailable for any reason, there should be an alternative that was not the number 2 at Sheffield United a few years ago. That's my opinion. And like I said, I'm not trying to be disrespectful or horrible. I don't want to be, and I hate doing it. But realistically, if we're to have an honest conversation about where Villa need to build, I think they need a backup goalkeeper. If Joe Gauchi's not that guy, they've got to sign a second choice goalkeeper, because I think anything happens to Martinez, the season could go in an awful way long term, and I wouldn't want that. That's just my opinion, Greg.
Yeah, and I think most Villa fans would share that opinion, as we've already discussed.
Yeah. Well, okay, not a negative way to end the show then, Greg. But yeah, we're just trying to give an honest reflection of where we think Villa's squad's at.
We got to be honest, haven't we? There's as I said at the start of the discussion around Olsen, there's no point in dressing it up any other way, because you interview 100 Villa fans and 95 of them would probably say, "I'm not very comfortable when Olsen's in goal." So why are we going to talk about anything else other than that?
Yeah, there's a way of doing it, isn't there? If you think someone's not good enough, you can say it, but obviously, some of the stuff that will get said about him on social media, I suspect, is absolutely horrendous, and that shouldn't happen. But we can have an honest conversation about it on a podcast, and that's what we've tried to do. Hopefully, he does not listen to this podcast. I'm sure he doesn't. I'm sure
he won't be coming back if he does.
I'm sure he's got much better things to do with his life than listen to what we think on a Villa podcast. So right then, Greg, thank you ever so much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure to talk to you as always. We'll be back. Oh, actually, I'm on holiday, so we might not be back next week. We'll work something out anyway. We'll have a conversation. I'm sure we'll be able to do something at some point. So yeah, you got anything coming up that you want to alert people to? I know you're not doing Villa per se on the Athletic at the moment.
Just before I forget, you're on holiday again and going away again, or just a break?
No, it's a longer holiday on this occasion. And I recently found out that I am flying back whilst Villa are playing the first game of the season, which I didn't know was happening. So that's been a surprise to me, and that has alarmed me in many, many ways. But before the other week, Greg, or a few months ago, I hadn't had a holiday for 4 years, so I'm getting them all in.
Right, okay.
All in this year. So
there's a term that I won't use on this podcast when women take control over their men. No. Don't let them go to the football. I think you're heading towards that period, mate.
Oh, absolutely no chance. That would never ever happen. Trust me, that would never ever happen. I will always be at Villa Park. That season ticket's basically like a family heirloom at this point. I've had it for so long. That's never going anywhere, Greg. Don't worry about that. Right then, thank you for that. Let's go then. Don't forget to do all the things that help the show wherever you're taking in this podcast. If you can do all the things that I mentioned every single week, I'll say the big one: Apple Podcast reviews, 5 stars, please. If you're enjoying the content, if you could do that would be absolutely great. Connor Harahan podcast, go back and check that out if you haven't listened to it. Connor will be on more regularly. I want to say more regularly, he's never been on before. Connor will be a regular contributor this season, hopefully once or twice a month, giving his opinions on all things Villa. Clearly has a lot of affection and loves the club. So it's going to be great to get Connor's thoughts throughout the season. I'm on Sky Wednesday and Friday. Transfer shows are back, so I'm hoping I'll be let off the leash and be able to do some Villa. So 9 o'clock and 12 o'clock Wednesday, Friday, if you want to see some potential Villa on Sky Sports News, I will be there. So right then, have a good evening. Greg's probably off to play golf up the Villa.